Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Well, camp schedule is out. We're ready to go to St. John Fisher for another year, ready to be a part of the dorm life and turkey burgers and marges on the beach and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, no kidding. The dorm life. I don't look forward to that. I look forward to training camp. I don't look forward to the dorm room. I could leave that at this point in my life.
I actually kind of do, actually. I don't mind it. I don't mind, like, just kind of waking up and grabbing my coffee and going downstairs and getting on the radio early in the morning is what I got to do. Don't love being away from the fam. And, Max has games and, might have to come back once or twice. But dorm life isn't too bad for me. I don't mind it too much. So we have that coming up. That is July 23rd, Matt, when the Bills begin training camp. So we'll start talking about that here on this episode of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, and looking forward to that. First, though, got to tell you about my weekend in New York and a couple of things that went along with it. So went to New York City, went to the Yankees game Friday, surprised Max. He had no idea. Literally like, hey, we're going to the airport today, going to the Yankees game tonight. Oh, my God. And Fanatics Fest. And he was maybe more excited about that because he's a big card collector, and it was insane. Mm-hmm. We're at Fanatics Fest, and, there was so much going on. I saw a video that I was not there when this happened. And in the video, have you seen the video of Joe Burrow throwing a baseball?
No, I have not.
Okay. I need you right now to go watch this video.
Okay.
And the one that you can watch, just pull up Joe Burrow struggles, right? I think if you write that,
Joe Burrow struggling. Yep.
And then if you see, and it's not just there's one by maybe Darren Ravel, but there's a couple others. I need you to watch Joe Burrow throw a baseball and tell me how terrible this is. And
yeah.
And I mean, is it the one? Oh yeah, there it is. The one from Ravel. There's 8 throws here. Each one is just as bad pretty much. And he hit the target twice, really 1.5 times. Look, I am not here to make fun of Joe Burrow. Enough people are doing that. That's fine. I get it. Like, a lot of times you can't translate from one sport to another. Please help me wrap my head around how a professional quarterback can be that bad at throwing a baseball, something that most kids do when they're a kid.
I almost feel like it's a bit. I almost feel like legitimately, I almost feel like it's a bit. Like, I think he's like almost intentionally screwing, or maybe he's not. I don't know. Like, you can see it's a very football throwing motion, not a baseball. Not that it's like completely different, but he's pulling everything. So everything is kind of snapping off to the left.
What he's doing, I can tell, is he's taking too long before he lets go.
Exactly.
Right?
He's holding
like a football,
on to it.
They're right. Snapping
He's holding on to it a little bit too much because, a football is bigger. So when you're doing that same throwing motion, a football just naturally is going to come out of your hand a little bit before a baseball is going to come out of your hand. So I think that's what the issue is. I mean, he's certainly a substantially more athletic person than I will ever be. So
listen, there's a lot of things that I can't skate. Right. I'm not.
Oh no, you can't skate.
I can skate a little. I can skate. I can't really stop, and I can't turn very well. Okay.
Sure.
But I can skate and just go around in circles. Okay. I can't draw. I am the worst artist in the world. I draw stick figures. Like, literally, I cannot draw. Okay. There are a lot of things in life, even athletically, that I can't do very well. That's fine. Like, things happen. You can't play a certain sport. Okay. I get that. I'm not asking him to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball here.
Yeah.
I'm seriously just fascinated how an NFL quarterback could be this bad at throwing a baseball.
It's interesting because it is bad. Like, the video, it's bad.
I went back and looked, by the way, at his high school bio. I said, he has to have some baseball background. Most quarterbacks do, right? No, but he was a state, first team all-state point guard in basketball. Yeah. Okay? Can do that.
Yeah. It looks like in the video there's some velocity to the throws. Like, it doesn't look like he's taking anything off of it. And maybe if he just took off a little bit, he would just be able to just kind of paint the strike zone there. I will say, I know I could do a better job in that situation, and I played not an ounce of baseball in my life. Baseball is one of those ones, though.
But you've played catch.
That's what I mean. But you play catch. Like, you play catch with your buddies when you're a kid. So, you can just throw a ball in a relatively straight line to another person, and that's just muscle memory. So but if you've legitimately, it's probably, I don't know this, it's probably the first time, he's thrown a baseball in, I don't know, 10, 15 years probably for him.
I guess that I still, I mean, people could think I'm being naive. I guess I still think that shouldn't matter.
Yeah, I
I
guess
haven't,
so.
I don't think I've ridden a bike in 10 years. That doesn't matter. I'm getting on it and I'm throwing it. I'm riding it. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Poor Joe
I don't
Burrow.
know. Yeah, and I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm legit fascinated by this. It is funny because partly why I'm fascinated by this. My son is 11. He's a pitcher in baseball. And because I don't want to overuse his arm, I heard David Cohn say one time, all pitchers should throw a football like for their arms when they're not throwing baseballs, like to not overdo it, and especially on days where they pitch. So I'm like, oh, he said because the emotion is good, it's good for your arm and for your shoulder, for your torque. So our buddy Joe Licata, who is a local high school football coach and played at UB, had a cup of coffee in the NFL. He runs a quarterback camp, and I've taken Max to quarterback camp just for this reason, because it's all very similar. And that's why I can't wrap my head around this.
Yeah, it is a little strange because you would think that it's a relatively similar motion. So, like Joe Burrow probably didn't anticipate going viral while at FanFest for
That's
something
correct.
specifically this way.
By the way,
But
it's Fanatics Fest, want to say, not FanFest, because Fanatics is the company. The company makes jerseys.
Yeah,
It's Fanatics Fest. Just to clarify that. But I agree with you. And he probably didn't expect two guys on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo to be breaking down his baseball throwing motion.
Tyreek Hill also grabbed some headlines at Fanatics Fest.
Oh, yes,
for a comment that he made that specifically ties to the Bills. So he was up doing an interview, and he basically like called out the Bills a little bit for playing cover 4 defense because he said they are, expletives that I'm not allowed to say on a podcast. It is a mind-bogglingly stupid comment. So whatever, right? Everybody's entitled to that. It's just stupid. Like, he is suggesting that the Bills are scared of him, which is why they play cover 4 defense. They play cover 4 defense because they dominate the Dolphins and because that is the defense that you should play against that team. Like, historically, Tua has not been fantastic against the Bills, and they've really had favorable matchups. I think I saw someone, I haven't looked into this specifically. I think Tyreek has lost his last 6 games or something. It is to the Bills.
Six game. Yep. I know our buddy Del Reed at 26 Shirts. Maybe that's where you saw it today.
Maybe that's where I saw it.
He said he's on a 6-game skid against Buffalo. So here's what he said, quote, those guys typically play cover 4 because they're a bunch of blank. And as you said, and yeah, I want to change it to those guys typically play cover 4 because it works against me.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it is? Come on.
That is
not only has Tyreek Hill lost these games, he hasn't had good numbers against the Bills.
No, and he's also had some bad stinkers along the way. Remember a couple of years ago, the season finale, and the Bills won to win the division, and that was at that point 4 straight years where they won the division. They won. Taylor Rapp had the interception at the end of the game on the last drive. Tyreek had some crucial drops in that game in the second half that allowed the Bills to climb back, take the lead eventually, and ultimately win the game. So, I know he has always said that he does not like the Bills. He does not like Bills fans. It's a rivalry. I want more of this in sports. I want more people talking this way, but you just have to do it with some sense. This one just doesn't make much sense. It feels like he's taking a shot for the sake of taking a shot. It just was a miss because it doesn't make any sense.
I also did see, and I apologize for not remembering where, some analytics that say that the Bills actually play less cover 4 against the Dolphins than they do against other teams. They play more cover 2 against the Dolphins. And that would make a little more sense because you bring a little bit more into the box area to defend against the run, something the Dolphins want to do. So I don't even know if Tyreek is totally right. I agree, though. The Bills are a very heavy zone team. Zone we talk about all the time. Cover 2 high safeties. Cover 4, everybody has quarters is how that works. And you're basically keeping an umbrella. Why would you not do that? That's the part of this that makes no sense to me. Here you have an NFL player who is supposed to understand strategy, and actually he should take it as a compliment. Yeah, those guys play cover 4 against me because they know that if not, I might beat them over the top. That's a compliment to you, dude.
Yeah, it should be. It absolutely should be. I mean, look at the skill set that they have on that roster, right? It makes a lot of sense if that was the approach that the Bills were going to take. So I don't understand. It just has to be him taking a shot. Him just trying to stir the pot a little bit with the Bills, but it's just, it's so interesting to me because I can't imagine. Now, I'm sure it happened, but a Bills player when they were struggling, taking a shot against the Patriots and what they do and like criticizing them when it's like, what foot do you have to stand on with this? Like, could you imagine like Lee Evans during the drought being like, the Patriots cover 4 against me because they're a bunch of, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
I agree with that. It kind of reminds me, it's a little different, but this is the same thing. It's actually funny. It's both zone defense. As a Syracuse fan, I mean, how many years did I live with people saying how Jim Boeheim, oh my God, I can't believe he's too soft. He can't run man-to-man defense. And I'm like, typically they have like one of the best defenses in the country because the cover, the 2-3 zone that Jim Boeheim would run, no one else runs it. And it's so tough to go against. Not always, but my argument always was, why would you switch if it's working?
Yeah, well, that's what I always say, play the hits, right? Like, if you know their hits, play the hits. And for the Bills, what they've done against the Dolphins historically for the last several years has seemed to work out. I mean, what do they have? Like 1 loss against the Dolphins in the last like 6 or 7 years, whatever it is. So
the Heat game in Miami.
There's no reason to change that now. Like, there's no reason to try and change your philosophy. The one thing, like, to Sean McDermott's credit, and a lot of defensive-minded head coaches or just really good defensive coordinators have had their way with that team. Like, they know how to stop that team, relatively speaking. Like, the Dolphins have still had some explosive drives and explosive plays, but they're a different team when they play against the bad teams and then when they play against the average teams and then especially the good teams. What is it? They have 1 win against a team that's over 500 in like a long time. Maybe it's 2. I know that was the big storyline 2 years ago. Like, they just don't beat good teams.
And they especially don't beat them in the cold, right? I mean, that's the other thing. Like, every time it's a late November, in December, January, the Dolphins haven't, been a team that's really been able to kind of sustain what they do earlier in the season. Have you thought much about, and this is more of an in-depth discussion later podcasts, but have you thought much about the AFC East competition where the Dolphins fall this year?
I still think they're second, but I don't think that that's the sexy thing to say right now. The sexy pick is the Patriots. And there'll be people when we get closer to the season who will pick the Patriots to win the division, which, to me seems a little bit too premature. I like the moves that they've made. I like the upside there. Just feels like they're still a little bit away. I think right now the hierarchy is still the Bills, then a decent gap, then the Dolphins and Patriots being close, and then the Jets as the 4th team that's going to have a good defense that who knows what Justin Fields and that offense can bring them. Maybe there's a little bit more upside there than I'm thinking. Maybe the coaching change will make a bigger difference than I'm anticipating it will make, but that's how I see it. I don't know if the betting odds align with that. I don't know if the Dolphins are still the second highest or second biggest favorites.
I'm sure they are. I have to look, but I'm sure they are.
I'd
be surprised.
I've admittedly always been a little bit higher on the Dolphins than most people, especially on this podcast. If you're somebody who's watching or listening, you're like, yeah, Beauvais always thinks that the Dolphins are better than they are. I give their offense credit because I do think that it's still pretty explosive at times. And, they can be a wild card.
I want to look at this. I'll tell you right now. Let's see if I can get each team's the division here.
Remember last year going into the season, the Bills weren't even the favorites to win the AFC East?
No, I know, right? Here we go. AFC East odds. I found it. Okay, here we go. AFC East odds right now. You know what? I guess I was wrong. It is the Patriots number 2.
Wow.
My fault. I guess I haven't checked in a while. So the Bills are a very heavy favorite to win the division, as you can imagine. Like, you literally got to lay like 260 to win 100 on the Bills, and
they're minus 260 to win the division.
Yeah. That's the closest odds. 275 275 on a couple spots here, and then the next best is a plus 475 or plus 500 for the Patriots. Then it's a plus 650, 700 for the Dolphins, and then the Jets are in out of the stratosphere.
Wow, plus 650 for the Dolphins?
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're out there and you're like, give me a good value, wouldn't you at least think about them? Because if things really break right and the Bills have a couple injuries,
yeah,
you'd think I have at least a shot there.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, they had the division lead until the final game of the season. Like, they would have won the division. So I don't think they're going to, but I don't think it's a ludicrous bet because of the odds. I think that's really good odds. You got to take advantage of the odds sometimes. And I feel
that's what I thought too when I said if you bet $100, you're going to win $1,100 if you bet both the Oilers and Pacers to win their series, but neither of them won their series. So I didn't bet the $100, but I did think it was good odds actually.
Yeah, the Pacers were plus 500 before the start of their series, and I just threw $30 on it.
Oh,
So, I mean, it would have paid $180. So it's not like it was like some crazy return, but I mean, plus 500. They took it to games. They had the lead going into game 7. They had the lead at the half going into the final half of the series, and then Oklahoma City went nuclear for like 5 minutes.
and obviously without Tyrese Halliburton, and that was terrible to see.
For sure. Yeah, but what great series. And both, I mean, not really hockey. Hockey wasn't that great of a series. The first couple games were really good. Then it cooled off a little bit.
All right. So the Bills camp schedule is out, and it's interesting to me when it came out. Did you get the same response from some people online, Bills fans, like, well, it's shorter and shorter every year. Why are they going out there? And I'm like, I don't think it is. Let me look. I went back and looked, Matt. It's the exact same number of practices as the last 2 years. It is not shorter and shorter. Now it's shorter than it was back, 2021 even. I think 2022 was the last time it was longer than this. But 2023, 2024, and this year, 2025, 11 practices, 10 open to the public. It's not shorter and shorter every year. It's the exact same number. It is shorter than it used to be, but it's actually not any shorter than it has been.
Yeah, it's been the routine the last couple of years.
Right.
Like we almost predicted, not like to our credit or anything, but we knew what the schedule was going to look like because it becomes so consistent of like, hey, 3 days on, off day, the next day back is probably the first day in pads, couple more days, then they do like another week, then it's time for the first preseason game, and then after that, a trip back to Buffalo where they continue training camp, even though it's back in Buffalo, and then they get ready for the remainder of their preseason games. You've got a blue and red scrimmage mixed in there as well. So yeah, it's just different than it used to be, training camp. Now that they do it in 2 spots, now that it's mostly in Rochester, but then the last couple weeks of it are in Buffalo, it doesn't look as daunting as it probably did in years past, because it didn't, like years ago, everything was in Rochester. It was a bigger chunk of it was in Rochester. They didn't come back to Buffalo for those last couple weeks of practice.
Yes. In fact, I'm pretty sure I remember that because I fly in the team charter that we left out of Rochester for a preseason game once.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yes.
That's it. I didn't know that, actually. That's interesting that they would do that. I mean, I guess it makes sense. If you're already there, why drive back to Buffalo if you're coming from Rochester and then back to Rochester?
So hold on, let me put this up. So to our producer, Mike Robier, who's listening, I actually just put this in the media assets. If you want to throw it up there, the schedule. There it is. Thank you. There's the training camp schedule. So they start on July 23rd, a very early start, but that's only because, Matt, the calendar is just early this year for everything going on in life and in football, right? Next year, I think it's actually even earlier. I think next year you're looking at the 22nd start, just based on the calendar that I've looked at. They have 3 straight practices, then a day off, 3 straight practices, then a day off, another practice, and then you come back home for that return of the blue and the red. So when you think about it, once they get going and on July 23rd, they are cooking with 6 practices over 7 days, all at 9:45 a.m.
Yeah, and then the only other difference to this graphic, too, is this graphic is what fans are allowed to be at. There's another practice in there on Monday the 4th. So it would actually kind of complete things a little bit, but that one is closed to the public. So they do that every single year where it feels like they have that closed to the public. So yeah, it's a nice little 3-week run basically in Rochester, the majority of the days during the week. So I'm excited for training camp. I'm excited for football, but I also want to enjoy the next couple of weeks for sure.
No doubt about it. And then they have the return of the blue and red. And I will tell you, if you have not been to Orchard Park in a while, the progress of the stadium, it's striking when you are there for a while, right? Like at some point you're like, okay, you've kind of seen it built up to its height, but there's still so much going around it. And I was really, the thing that was for me, we've gone down there more than most people, I would say, and even sometimes we're not there for a month at a time. But I think during OTAs and minicamp, the thing that struck me was how it's so visible now from the Bills practice field. And you're looking over and going, holy cow. And it's not fall. There's leaves on the trees now. So you can even see it through that, because before it's like, well, with the leaves on the trees, you can't see as much. Doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Even just driving to the stadium when you're coming from the city or when you're coming from the north towns and you're getting ready and you're getting close to Orchard Park, it just hits you when you're still on the thruway. It's really, really impressive to see how much progress has been made on this stadium. And now the structure is there. So now it's basically what it's going to look like with just out, obviously, all of the exterior layers and the bells and whistles that'll ultimately come with it. But the structure is there. Like what it's going to look like, you can see. Also, being the last year in the current stadium, I would imagine that the blue and red scrimmage even is more chaotic than it has been in years past, because for some people,
That's right.
maybe that'll be their last chance to get to the stadium or to
It's a
get
great
to
point.
something in Orchard Park.
It's a great point. Yeah, I mean, there are people who just can't go to games.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to go to the games with everything going on in the regular season the way it is. One preseason game this year at home. Maybe you can't get to that particular one. You don't have a couple options. It's a one preseason year, one preseason home game year. So that's a great point. That particular game, that particular scrimmage, I should say, in practice on that Friday night at 5:30 p.m. It's probably going to be pretty big for a lot of people out there. So we'll see how it goes there. And then, of course, across the street, the new stadium that's going in, and this is in conjunction with the old stadium, as we call it, the current stadium. I hate saying the old stadium, the current stadium closing down this year. And your series on this stadium and all that's happening, a very big success. Congratulations on episode 1. And we got a lot more that you guys are going to be rolling out here.
Yeah, definitely. So episode 1 kind of laid the framework, the foundation for what the series is going to be about, which was very much of the history of the stadium, them moving there and talking to some Bills legends about their favorite memories or first memories inside the stadium. So you can still watch that entire thing, WKBW.com, but we're recording this on June 23rd. The evening of June 23rd at 7:30 p.m. on Channel 7 will be the second episode, which really focuses on the singular question: what is the greatest game ever played inside Highmark Stadium? And that's a relative question because everybody could have a different answer. We're going to specifically be talking about a couple games in this episode. That doesn't mean that we're not talking about some of the other games down the road, because we will be. But I personally, what's interesting here is I think my answer is different than what most people would say.
Okay.
I think you might have the same answer as me, but I think most people would say it has to be the comeback game. And I don't feel that way.
Well, here's the issue. How do you define greatest, right? Everybody has their own way of interpreting that. If you're talking about action-packed, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, the comeback is up there, even though the first half was not great. It was a pretty boring game and pretty bad, actually, one team scoring. And then the second half was actually the same thing, but because of the drama that was being built. I mean, you could say I was trying to think of a couple. There was a playoff game, maybe the Chiefs playoff game, even,
No, they lost.
You're
talking about in the 90s in the Super Bowl run? That Chiefs playoff game? Wasn't there a Chiefs playoff game in there?
There were two, actually. There were two there, but neither one of them was super close. I mean, they beat the Broncos in an AFC championship game, but it was a boring game except for one incredible play.
Was it 10-7 or
Carlton Bailey? Yeah, that Carlton Bailey ran a touchdown. I think it was 10-7. I don't even remember for sure.
Yeah.
I think the answer is Cleveland Hill 16, Salamanca 14 in the 1989 Class C championship. Yeah. That's what I say. But, what does my opinion matter? You know what? Like, so the way I define greatness is, to me, for a game like this, I'll always go back to 51-3 because of what it meant to this team, this city, this organization, this area. It was just such a great feeling to be in that stadium. But it was not a great football game, but it was a great game to be a part of.
Yeah, if you're a Bills fan or if you were on the Bills, that is the most that's the most impressive. If it was what's the most impressive win inside the stadium, it's not even a question. It's that one for sure. But I still think the magnitude matters of the stage. Like, I get the comeback game and how incredible that was, and them being down 35-3 and still winning the game. Like, that is bananas. I think that would be the second best game ever played inside that stadium. So it's not like I don't think it's
What's
good.
the first?
I think 51-3. Okay, I really do. It's
got to be.
Imagine, we're covering the team, right? And if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, you have obviously been very invested in the Bills, at least for probably the majority of your life. Imagine if they were in one of these AFC championship games against the Chiefs that they've played in, and the final score was 51-3 in either direction, how bananas that would have been. Like, that does not happen. So whatever, like, the stars must have aligned perfectly that day. So the stories about 51-3 that we've got in the episode that's running for week 2 are really, really awesome to hear. I think that those are probably the consensus top 2 games, understandably so. I wasn't around for 1980, so I don't remember that game, but I know that's another big one when they finally beat the Dolphins. My thing, though, would be the perfect game, like the Josh Allen touchdown, just ridiculous performance that he had against the Patriots in the playoffs, because that almost felt like slaying the dragon a little bit, like finally like turning the page on an era of football, like 1980 was against the Dolphins. Mm-hmm. But this one was in the playoffs against the Patriots and against Bill. It would probably be even higher if it was still Brady as the quarterback. But because it wasn't Brady, it changes a little bit.
If it's not COVID and it's a full stadium and everything happens the way it still happens, how much are we talking about the Ravens game here?
That's individually my favorite moment I've seen inside the stadium.
Right.
That individual play is my favorite moment.
Probably mine as well.
Just even with 7,000 people there, it felt like there were 77,000 people, and just the feeling of that game finishing and then realizing they're one win away from a trip to the Super Bowl. Like, that was a pretty crazy realization to have happen of like, oh my gosh, this team, because that is so foreign to me. At that point, it had been so long since this team has even been remotely. I mean, a week before that, they won their first playoff game in 25 years. So for them to win again and put them that close to the Super Bowl was pretty crazy.
All right. So I'll give you a couple like under the radar choices that people probably haven't brought up, but I think could definitely be things to discuss. First of all, I was at the very first playoff game ever at that stadium. I was 15 years old. They played the Houston Oilers before the comeback in the wild card in 1988. And it was a good game. And it came down to the end. And the Bills punted. And Steve Tasker recovered the punt or stripped the punt. I can't remember exactly. To seal the game from his college teammate, Curtis Duncan, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
On the Houston Oilers, which was incredible. And that was the first ever playoff game in that stadium. It was amazing. It was great. People might remember earlier that year, the goalpost coming down when the Bills won the division. Mm-hmm. And Fred Smerlas dancing around. And iconic photos of the guy with the Marlboro guy in the background and all that, and the guy sitting on top of the goalpost. That's a regular season game. I mean, a couple more for you.
What year was that? 88?
88.
I got a great story about that from the series.
Okay, go ahead.
So they gave the horses medicine because when the field goal that the police officers were standing at, like sitting on, like they used to be in the tunnel on horses. They had to give the horses medicine to calm them down because there were so many people running out onto the field and the goalposts coming down that they didn't want the horses to attack fans that were out on the field. So they had to like calm the horses down. And then I guess just from the people that were there, it was just absolute chaos for like 10 minutes down on the field.
2002, I know the Bills lost 37-31 in overtime. Chad Morton kick return. What a game that was, though. I don't know if you remember. You know this. This was incredible against the Jets. Oh, the opening game of the season in 2002. Drew Bledsoe. Let me pull up the stats here. People will say that it was a crazy game. Went back and forth. The Bills lose on a kick return to open overtime. Drew Bledsoe, he actually wasn't great, 271 throwing, but I mean, it was a crazy game. Chad Morton had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns in that game against the Bills. One was 98 yards, another was 96 yards. There are a few more that come to mind. How about the snow game? We talked about that, in 2017. That was a regular season game, but if the Bills don't win that game, they don't break the drought.
Yeah, 2017 snow game is maybe my favorite whole game. It's the perfect game, and that are the 2 that stand out as far as like entire games that I've been to. And then the Taron Johnson pick 6 is very high. Another game that has gotten brought up a lot, 2 Patriots games, the 2003 week 1, Sam Adams away we go game, 35-0 or 31-0, whatever it was one that was brought up a lot. And so was the win against the Patriots in week 3 in 2011 during the droughts. Like, that game was one that people really fondly looked back on. I was at that game as a fan. I was still in college, and that was quite the scene that day. Would that have been a little bit before you were back in Buffalo? 2011?
That was the first year I was back. I came back like 2 weeks before that game, maybe 3 weeks before that game.
Yeah, so there
A
was
month before the game.
The Raiders game the week before where they erased the big deficit
Yes.
and came back and won, and then that game against the Patriots where they, erased the huge deficit and won. That was a pretty legendary day inside that stadium.
All right, so the Bills did play the Chiefs in an AFC Championship game, go to the fourth Super Bowl, but the week before that was one of the coldest games in Buffalo Bills history, and it was an amazingly awesome game drama-wise against the LA Raiders, not the 51-3 game, another game against the Raiders. The Bills actually were on the brink of losing in this game. They won 29-23. What a weird score that was, right? But they're actually down in the fourth quarter to the Raiders, 23-22. And in this game, the kicker for the Raiders slipped on a kickoff because this field was icy, and Steve Tasker grabbed the ball and almost ran for a touchdown. It was a big swinging moment. Yeah, big swinging moment of the game, actually, when that happened. That's one that a lot of people remember. That's another one. You talk about these games in the playoffs and going to Super Bowls, that one. And then 1990, the week before 51-3, Marino and Kelly, 44-34 in the snow, Matt.
Yeah, I've seen the highlights of that game. That's pretty crazy. That's like very, very awesome. I mean, it's weird going back and watching old football just of how different it is than current football. But those guys just dropping back and throwing it all over. Didn't the Bills have a pretty big lead in that game? And then the Dolphins kind of like clawed their way back to make the score a little bit closer.
I looked up the box score. The Bills were basically up 10-17, then they made it a 7-point game, and then the Bills scored again.
So the AFC Championship games were the win against the Raiders, 51-3. Then there was the Broncos one that they won 10, whatever it was, with the 10 points. There was a Chiefs AFC Championship win. What was the other one? Was it
at
the Dolphins?
Miami? At Miami. They went on the road and beat Miami.
Wow. Was it a convincing win or was it a close game?
Convincing win. It was the same year as the comeback. They win the comeback game. The next week they go to Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers on the road.
Yeah.
And then the next week they go to Miami and beat them on the road.
Was Jim back for the Steelers game?
Jim was back for the Miami game. Frank Reich beat the Steelers.
Wow. So Frank Reich did the comeback game, and then the next week they went and beat the Steelers on the road in the playoffs?
That is correct, yes.
That's crazy. Can you imagine like Mitch Trubisky going on the road and winning a divisional round game for the Bills now, and then Josh coming back for the AFC Championship?
Yeah, you want to hear something funny? So the quarterback stats in that game, Reich was 16 of 23 for 160 and 2 touchdowns. Neil O'Donnell was 15 of 29 for 163, but 2 interceptions. That was the difference in the game. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They were pretty much the same guy, though. And then because we keep kind of doing this with the score, I just want to make sure and say it right. So in 1991, this is the Carlton Bailey interception game. It was 10-7. By the way, in that game, I don't even know this, but the kicker for the Broncos missed 3 kicks. He missed like 2. I think he missed 3 field goals and an extra point, maybe 4 kicks.
That's crazy. Sometimes it's funny how sometimes you do need weird stuff to happen, which is why this year when we finished the Ravens game, I remember we recorded the post-game podcast up in the press box. After Mark Andrews dropped the 2-point conversion, I was like, this has got to be the year. It's like this, it's got like all of the stars aligned in that game. You got the interceptions, you got the fumble recovery from Von Miller. Mark Andrews drops an easy 2-point conversion. Like this has to be the year. And then it wasn't. So now you go into, well, this has to be the year, the final year inside the stadium, right? Or the stadium was just truly cursed and they'll never win inside the stadium and you got to wait until they go across the street.
I mean, there's been a lot of interesting things that happened in games too. One of the ones that comes to my mind is the fight that I got hit into the wall between Leonard Fournette and Shaq Lawson. And I got hit into the wall during the fight. Were you on the field for that?
I was in the fight too.
Yes, I love it. I thought you were.
The adrenaline rush was
out
of this world. That was Josh's rookie season because that was the year or the year prior.
Is that the Robert Foster game?
Yeah, that's the Robert Foster game. Because Jalen Ramsey, was taking shots at Josh before he had ever even played in the league. And then, Josh like kind of ran over one of his teammates into the end zone and he was right there and he was flexing. And like, the Bills have just kind of owned Jalen Ramsey ever since then.
Right in front of me is where Sammy Watkins toe tap for the touchdown against the Vikings. There's a few great shots of me looking right at his feet.
Yep. Yeah. You and Jeff Russo were standing right there on the field.
Exactly
I was in the corner of the end zone shooting that game. That was my first year on the field shooting games.
You know what's I'll miss about this stadium though? You know what? I shouldn't say it that way because the new stadium will be a lot like this actually but this stadium compared to others in the league, but I think the new one will be very similar. there's not a lot of room. And I know people don't like that sometimes. I love it that the fact that we're
Intimate.
so tight to everything.
It's intimate. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like
Because you go to these other stadiums, as you know, there's a lot of room on the sidelines, which is great for moving around. But like when you're a little bit more packed in there, everything gets, like you said, a little bit more intimate, a little more intense.
I've had my life flash before my eyes a couple times back in the day with a camera on your shoulder as a play is coming right at you, and you're trying to make sure that you don't get catapulted over or flipped over top of a player or somebody. I've seen that happen to some of our colleagues. I've been fortunate to not be on the receiving end of that, but you definitely get that with that very small sideline.
Drop us a comment on the YouTube side or wherever you pod about what do you think is the greatest game ever played inside that stadium for whatever reason. And I know a lot of people make it personal, and that's fine, but maybe
sure.
what about like the actual game itself, like a game that was played inside the stadium? Make sure you drop us a comment there. It's always Game Day in Buffalo on YouTube at Sal Sports, and of course wherever you pod as well. I had to bring this up, so I brought this home. I went to New York this weekend. Here he is. This is the bobblehead they gave out at the Yankees game Friday night. Is an Aaron Judge Superman bobblehead.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Now I'm showing it on the screen, so for those of you who aren't watching, you have to. There, put his face over mine. Pretty cool. I like it. For as far as bobbleheads go, this is a pretty cool bobblehead. I don't know if you ever noticed. I have a bobblehead of myself sitting here, by the way.
Yeah, I just didn't think it was just some random bald guy.
No,
I assumed that it was
myself.
you.
Somebody made bobbleheads and made me one day, but this Aaron Judge bobblehead is very cool, by the way. It is one of the better bobbleheads I've seen, actually, because of the new Superman coming out.
Yeah, I think that's very cool. The Sal Capaccio bobblehead also looks a little bit like it could be a Jay Glazer bobblehead.
Yes,
actually, it does look a little bit like that. So
shout out to Jay Glazer, by the way. He quick story. He has a book called Unbreakable. It's about mental health and overcoming depression and anxiety. And Jay has had some struggles in his life, and it's great. And I read the audiobook about a year and a half ago, and it was really great. And I made sure to tell Jay that when I saw him at the owners meetings, and he was just like really gracious to kind of talk with me about it. It was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, good guy. Good guy.
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, it's maybe you can just pretend it's a Jay Glazer. If for some reason Jay Glazer is ever on the podcast, you can just tell him, hey, look, I get your bobblehead right behind.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. All right. So what do we got coming up? We got camp schedule starting obviously soon. Got another couple weeks before I head to Italy. So we'll talk before then for sure. And then of course, it's kind of the dead period of the NFL. We don't expect a lot of moves, but we are watching for a few contractual situations to play out, not just in Buffalo with James Cook and obviously, but how about Trey Hendrickson, his situation? How about Micah Parsons and his situation? Yeah. These are contractual situations that the league will be monitoring.
Yeah, and we'll of course get some comments in the YouTube, especially about like, hey, talk about football, stick to football. You took too long to get to the football conversation. What football? What would you like us to specifically talk about right now? I mean, if you want in-depth breakdowns of like the tight end position, we can certainly come your way. But right now, this is legitimately summer break. Like these guys are on beaches right now, enjoying their lives.
We will break the roster down a little bit as we get closer.
Yeah, we usually do an offensive episode and a defensive episode. So we'll probably do that in the next couple weeks before you go off to Italy.
All right. Thanks a lot to our producer, Mike Rabier. Thank you for watching, for listening at Sal Sports on YouTube. Of course, at Sal Sports on Twitter. Not only follow, but subscribe to me. You got special exclusive content coming your way. Of course, at Matt_Bove. And make sure you watch the series they have going on Channel 7 right now. When is it? Monday nights at 7:30 p.m., right, Matt?
Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Channel 7 in Buffalo. And there was so much success that we're also going to put them on Friday evenings as well on Channel 7. But the entire episodes can be found on WKBW.com or the WKBW app for your smart TV. So if you're not around on Monday or Friday night on actual television, just go to WKBW.com or download the Channel 7 app. Everything is free. There's 6 more episodes. You can watch all 7 of them. So we're really, really excited about it. Episode 2 premieres the 23rd, and then the next one will be 7 days later.
Aaron Judge bobblehead agrees. It's a great series, great episode. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you next time. And it's always Game Day in Buffalo.